Hello everyone and welcome back to my MCU ranking, part 2. So just to recap, for those of you who have forgotten my list so far, number 23 is The Incredible Hulk, number 22 was Thor The Dark World, 21 Avengers Age of Ultron, 20 Captain America The First Avenger, 19 Thor Ragnarok, 18 Captain Marvel, 17 Iron Man 2, 16 Ant-Man and the Wasp, 15 Spider-Man Homecoming, 14 Thor, and 13 Spider-Man Far From Home. So, that's it so far. That's just, and it's just my opinion, it's just subjective. So if we disagree, that's fine. That's okay. But because there's 23 films, I have to do it in 2 parts, otherwise it just makes the whole thing too long. So I'm gonna do numbers 12 to 1 in this part of the ranking. So I hope you enjoy. Number 12 is Ant-Man, the very first Ant-Man film. Now, I like this film. From what I can remember, I've not seen it for quite a while, but from what I remember, it really surprised me because the concept of the film is stupid. I mean, Ant-Man, I thought, when I heard they were doing this, I thought, wow, Marvel, wow, you've really hit the bottom of the barrel with this one. But actually, they do the best with the concept. They literally do the very best they can to make the concept cool. And it actually is quite cool. And the sense of scale of this film is very impressive. The fact that they're able to manipulate the scale of the film by when he does actually get inside the suit and shrink himself down, making everything else around him seem much bigger. You really do feel like Peyton Reed and Paul Rudd really do make you feel like, wow, this actually, they have actually done that. They've changed the scale of the film. And it is quite cool. And I do like the relationship that Scott Lang has with his daughter, which is quite good. And I like the idea of Scott Lang, you know, being a sort of a thief and a convict, and then they used that to their advantage to help them in their mission. I do think the story is, you know, isn't really anything special, but it's a really cool concept. I'll give it that. I guess the downside to the film is probably the villain, Yellow Jacket. The villain, he doesn't really do an awful lot until the end of the film, which is a shame. But this film actually surprised me. It was quite touching in a few areas, and it was funny. It was genuinely quite cool. The music is good. It's a fun time. It's not Marvel's best thing ever, but they managed to make the concept really quite cool. I don't think the Falcon scene was particularly necessary, though. That was forced fan service. Okay. So, number 11 is a film which I consider to be probably the most overrated in the series. Captain America the Winter Soldier. A lot of you are going to be thinking, oh my god, what the hell? But, okay, I'm sorry, but hear me out. I do like Captain America the Winter Soldier. I do like it. It just missed the top 10. I mean, it's at number 11. I think this film, the first 45 minutes of this film are way too slow. I cannot get into this film. I mean, other than the action sequence that happens at the beginning, the first act of this film is so goddamn slow, and I just struggle to get into it, to be honest. It is a solid film, and it's a good film about conspiracy and about the corruption of S.H.I.E.L.D. and how that all comes back to bite them. And it's, you know, your Captain America realizing that he's in the modern world and he can't trust anyone. He can't trust S.H.I.E.L.D. He can't trust Fury. The kind of faking of Nick Fury's death was pointless. I didn't see the point of that. But this film does have impressive action, which was choreographed by the Russos. I'll give them that. And the story is generally, it's a good thriller. And I do like the revelation of him finding out that Bucky is the Winter Soldier and having to confront his best friend. There's some really good stuff in here. I just think the first act is where it's a bit sloppy. I mean, get past the first bit, and then you have a great film. But I just think that the Winter Soldier the first act is troubled. It's too slow. I think you could have cut at least 15 minutes of this film out, and it would have been better. It's too long. It didn't need to be 2 hours 16 minutes. I did like the introduction of Falcon though, and that was good. And Scarlett Johansson gives a good performance in this film, and the whole Hydra revelation was quite good. It was a good film. It was good. but it's not one that I rush back to a lot for some reason. I just have to be in the mood to watch The Winter Soldier. I have to be in the mood to watch it. It is better than the first one, but I don't think it's as good as everyone says it is. But that's just my opinion. Okay, number 10. Now we're into the top 10. Woohoo! Number 10 is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Yay! Woo! I like Guardians 2. It's a solid movie. It's a really solid movie. It's very fun. It's not quite as fun as the first one. I think the film is too long. It suffers from bagginess at times, and I do think that it's a bit of a Dave Bautista show, to be honest. He does take over the film with some of his comedy, which is fine. But Ego as the villain, I think he was quite good. I enjoyed it. I haven't seen it for quite a while, so do forgive me if I don't remember everything. But the music of the film is not as good as the first one. The music choices that they have aren't as great as the first one. I think the opening is cool when they're in that fight scene when Groot is dancing to Mr. Blue Sky and whatnot. The death of Yondu was sad, and that was well done. It is a fun movie. It just has some pacing problems. I think that's the main thing. And the whole Star-Lord and Gamora romance thing, like will they, won't they, will they, won't they? It's kind of it's a bit it's a bit unnecessary. I did quite like Nebula's inclusion of the story, and that's the fact that she gets a bit more to do, which is nice. But yeah, and the end of the film was, of course, very sad, whatnot. But I don't really remember this film as much. Visually, it's great, just like the first one. Visually, it's very good. But yeah, and I think Star-Lord's, the drama with Star-Lord's parents was well done, and he learns of the reasons of his mother's death, and the final confrontation with him and his father was good with Kurt Russell. But yeah, I think it's just really, really entertaining. So yeah, that's number 10 on this list. Number 9 is Iron Man 3. Iron Man 3, well, this is a very different film to what we would have got with the first two. Shane Black directs this movie, not Jon Favreau. Although Jon Favreau is in it, he's involved in the film, he's in it as Happy Hogan, but he doesn't direct. And I think this film made some very risky choices, and it basically chose to strip, and I kind of like that. It was very bold. The twist regarding the Mandarin, I don't mind it, but I know a lot of people are pissed about it, and they did kind of turn Ben Kingsley into a joke. And yeah, the whole extremist thing was kind of a bit convoluted and confusing, I guess. I mean, to be fair, the film, with having the lack of Iron Man, does make up for it in the last act with the big fight. And that final battle is pretty good. So I do appreciate that. I didn't think having the kid in the film was necessary. Harley, the little kid that helps him, I didn't think that was entirely necessary. I thought it was clever, actually, how they wrote around Tony Stark. They changed his character a bit. They made him suffer from sort of anxiety because of what happened in Avengers when he threw the missile into the wormhole, and he was going through like PTSD and stuff like that. And I thought that was quite clever, and it wasn't overdone. It was well contained, and he went on a good arc, and he actually. I mean, Tony is still a narcissist. Let's be honest; he's still a narcissistic prick. But he became slightly more lovable at the end because he did realize that he needed to, that he didn't deserve Pepper, and he needed to treat her a lot better because him and Pepper are together now, and they're in a romance. And I think teasing Pepper's death though was a bit stupid. They didn't really need to do that. And Guy Pearce I don't get his transformation. The fact that he's this really weird sort of looking nerd, and his motivations are like because Tony skipped a meeting on the roof, he hates him now. Like, oh, okay. It's a bit weird how he goes from that to this like charming, dashingly good looking guy with these fire powers. Like, yeah, okay. I didn't really quite get that. Don Cheadle was great as Rhodey though. I do like Don Cheadle again as Rhodey, and his inclusion to the film is good. I mean, the Iron Patriot thing, I don't really mind it too much, but It would have been better to probably keep him as War Machine, but nevertheless, he gets involved in the in the action, should we say. I do like the action scenes of the film, and I like the scene when Tony has to rescue those 13 people that are falling from the plane. That's really good. That's really well done. The music score is good, although it's very repetitive. I think Jon Favreau's inclusion in the film is good, although his character kind of like, he starts going after the henchman guy, and then he gets taken out, and then he's in hospital for the rest of the film, so they kind of just forget about him for a bit. So I don't know why that was, but yeah. I mean, no, Iron Man 3 is a very good film for me. It's a very entertaining film. It does do that twist with the Mandarin, so you're either going to like that or you're not going to like it. But I thought it was funny, but it was a very clever twist that it will either work or not work for you. So anyway, number 8 is actually the first Iron Man film, simply called Iron Man. So Iron Man was actually the very first movie of the MCU, as we know, and what a great movie. I really do like this movie. It does have some pacing issues. The film probably could do with a bit more action, but it was a great origin story for Tony Stark. And I loved all the stuff in the terrorist camp in the cave when he's building the suit and he's working with that guy called Yinsen, and he breaks out. And I mean, the action that is in the film is awesome. I can't deny it. The music score is brilliant and fantastic. I love the scene when Tony has his Mark II suit and he's flying for the first time out of his house, which is really good. Robert Downey Jr. nails this character. This part was made for him, and no wonder that he played the role for essentially 11 years, which is absolutely amazing. And you know, this was where it all began. He's funny, he's charming, he's witty, he's narcissistic, but he's a lovable arsehole. That's kind of the way I see Tony Stark and Robert Downey Jr.'s version of the character. I really do think that he was great. And this was a very popular film, and no wonder. The opening scene is great and polarizing as well. It really throws you into the action. I like the villain of Obadiah Stane. I guess he's quite good, and the final battle is a good sequence as well. Gwyneth Paltrow is good as Pepper Potts, and her and Tony seem to spark a bit of a romance. The end of the film is interesting when Tony actually reveals to everyone that he is actually Iron Man, which is quite good. Terrence Howard is a good roadie, although I do think Don Cheadle's better, but obviously they got rid of Terrence Howard after this film, so yeah. Kind of, it would have been interesting to see Don Cheadle in this film from the beginning, but it's a very good film. I really do like the first Iron Man film, and Tony's character arc is good, and he goes on a real journey when he's in that terrorist camp, and he realizes what he has to do to protect the world. And yeah, I think Jon Favreau did a good job with the film. So, and also, yeah, the post-credit scene is a great setup for the Avengers. So, speaking of which, number 7 is Avengers Assemble, or The Avengers, if you live in the US. This movie is great. It's a great crowd pleaser. Let's just put it that way. Joss Whedon did a great job directing this film. I think seeing these characters come together, Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, Black Widow, Hulk, Hawkeye, seeing them all together is great. It's a great action movie. There's terrific amounts of fun to be had. The story isn't anything grand, but it's fine. It doesn't need to be. It's just the first piece of what will come. I mean, this is only a taste of what we will see in Civil War and Infinity War and especially Endgame. But Avengers Assemble is a great crowd pleaser. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of comedy in the film. I do think the way they treated Hawkeye was a bit of a shame, though. How they just suddenly made Loki control him and go to the bad side, which was a shame. But Age of Ultron decided to remedy that. I do think the film is a bit too long. I think it's a tad bit long. I think there are moments in the middle where it could have been trimmed a bit. But it's just a really fun movie, and it's a great first crossover for these characters who we'd seen so far in the first phase. But again, this is only a taste of what will come. And you can't beat that classic score by Alan Silvestri, that classic theme, which has been used in all of the Avengers films, which is brilliant. So that's all I'm really going to say about Avengers Assemble. Number 6 is the first Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, this is a film I used to put a bit higher, actually, on the list, but I brought it down. I have brought it down a peg. Before Disney released The Force Awakens the next year, they basically This was Marvel's answer to Star Wars, Guardians of the Galaxy. It's a fun movie about this team of people who come together and they go on a space adventure. And I love me some sci-fi, and I just think this is one of those movies where the Marvel formula works perfectly. The comedy in this film is great. I think it's hilarious. The music of the film, the 80s music, really works for this film. It gives it that kind of old retro feel, and James Gunn directs the film perfectly. The characters are all lovable and charming. They're all likable. Even Gamora, who's the most serious character, aside from Thanos and Ronan. Ronan is a bit of a villain, but other than that, the film is great. It's tons of fun. The visuals are insane. They're really good. It's just so funny as well, and it's paced really well. And it is better than the second one, I think. I think it's much more fluid than the second one. And, you know, you gotta love that moment when they go, "We are Groot." Oh, it's just brilliant. The prison break scene is awesome. I think Karen Gillan, actually, as Nebula, is also a very good character. And the thing is, no one knew about these characters. No one knew about Guardians of the Galaxy before this film. Well, very few people did anyway. This film proved that these characters could be popular and could really stand on their own. And, you know, what can I say? They did an amazing job with this. And I can't wait to see their third movie, because James Gunn was off the project, then he was on the project, and now he's off the project, and he's on the project. But he's back on board now, and he is directing it. So I can't wait to see Volume 3, and I hope that it's is just as good as this, or at least the second one. You know, it would be good for it to be just as good as this. But yeah, I also like Yondu as well. He's a good character, and all the dancing scenes are just fun. You know, what can I say? This is just a fun movie. It's not particularly deep or emotional. Well, actually, I say that, but the opening scene is actually quite heartfelt, with Star-Lord's mother dying right in front of him. But I think it's one of the most entertaining MCU films that I really love it. I can't help but love it. Maybe it's the Star Wars fan in me loving it, but I just thought this was one time when the Marvel formula really worked. It really just worked for me. But yeah, so it's at number 6. Number 5 is Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is Marvel's most trippiest movie. Literally, the visuals, like the visual mind fuckery of this film is insane. The visuals are so good and out of this world. But they really work, and I like the idea of the series introducing sort of like the mystic arts and mysticism and sorcery. And Benedict Cumberbatch was a surprisingly good choice, actually, for Stephen Strange. He puts on an American accent for the role, but he's proven that he can do an American accent before. And I mean, they have made him look somewhat like the character from the comics, but I like his story. I mean, he starts out as this arrogant prick. Then he goes through the accident, and then he has to learn to be less selfish and become a better person by having these powers and learning how to be a good guy, because he can never be a neurosurgeon again because of what happened to his nerves. And the car accident sequence is quite explosive. Actually, it's really quite a dramatic scene. Rachel McAdams is his love interest in the film. She doesn't do an awful lot, but she's quite good in the film. I do think the film is very exposition heavy. At times it gets a bit complicated, but that's not too much of a worry to me. I actually quite like Mads Mikkelsen as the villain, as Caecilius, I think his name is. If I pronounced that wrong, I apologise. But Mads Mikkelsen's villain is a good character, and also like Chiwetel Ejiofor as Mordu, who appears to be an ally, but until the end of the film. And Tilda Swinton as the Ancient One. There was a lot of controversy about her casting, but I don't mind her being the Ancient One. I think it works. I mean, yeah, okay, it's not accurate to the comics, but, you know, it's called an adaptation for a reason. And, you know, having her as a woman, I don't see the issue with that. I don't see an issue at all, and I think she did a great job. Maybe her fate in the film was a bit predictable, but, you know, nevertheless, I still very much enjoyed her. Anyway, and yes, the film score by Michael Giacchino. I mean, wow, this guy really gets around. He does loads of scores. and his score for Doctor Strange is very weird, and it works. It works very well for me. Okay, number 4 is Captain America: Civil War. Easily the best Captain America movie, without a doubt. It is very long at 2.5 hours, but it does a great job because it actually teases the next 2 Avengers movies, because it adds a few more people into the film. It is a bit of fan service, yes, of course it is, but that airport scene is pretty damn amazing, and it was a scene that the fans really wanted. But the Russos don't compromise. They keep the focus on Captain America, and they tell the story. And what's interesting is the conflict between Tony Stark and Steve Rogers is very interesting, and they both have their motivations and reasons for what they're doing, and none of them is, neither of them are right or wrong in this instance. I mean the person who is supposed to be the central antagonist of the story, Baron Zemo, he's a little disappointing, to be honest. He's sort of there. I mean, he's there because he needs to be, but he doesn't feature a lot in the story, and he kind of feels like tacked on in a way. So I don't really think much of him as a character. The action is insane, and I like the emotional stakes of the film as well, particularly that final fight between Iron Man versus Captain America and Bucky, when Iron Man discovers the revelation about his parents' death. That's pretty intense, I must say. And that final fight is very good, and I like the moment when Captain America drops the shield and when he takes his friend away from Tony and whatnot. And I mean, there's just a lot of tension. The film does build up, and it does take a while to get going, but it's really well done. And I think the Russos did a much better job than Winter Soldier. Even though I do like the Winter Soldier, it's overrated to me. Whereas this is great. This is really, really good. So well done to them for Civil War. But there are just 3 movies that I prefer. Number 3 is Black Panther. Black Panther is a really game-changing Marvel movie. For a long time, Marvel had got themselves into this sort of formula of doing something that was just funny and setting up for other films, and I think there was a clear lack of diversity with Marvel. But Black Panther proved everyone wrong. Black Panther is an amazing film. It's really, really good. Is it perfect? No. The only downside with Black Panther is some of the comedy is a bit forced and doesn't really fit. But I think, obviously the film couldn't go without light relief. I'm not saying that, but the comedy that's there doesn't work. But I think that this is a film that does take itself a bit more seriously, which I like. And I love the character of T'Challa. I think he's a great character. And the action scenes are insane. I love the chase scene in South Korea. I think it's South Korea anyway. I also love the music of the film. Andy Serkis as Claw, Ulysses Claw, the guy with the fake arm. He's really cool. He's kind of underused, but it's a shame they sort of kill him off halfway through. But it's not a major problem for me. I really like Killmonger as the villain, and I think his motivations are pretty cool. It's a very dramatic film, and there's a lot of I think all the black cast that are in the film do a magnificent job. I like the idea of that Wakanda is a place that actually appears to be somewhat of a poor African country, but then it's built purely on the technology of this element known as vibranium, which kind of is the epicenter of their whole world, which I think is really clever. It's a great idea. I love Shuri. The character of Shuri is awesome, and she's like the Q to his James Bond. Essentially, she's the person that gives T'Challa all the gadgets. She's actually his sister, but she gives him loads of gadgets and whatnot, and she's just really awesome. She's a great character. The action is insane. I love the challenge moments as well. The final battle is really good. Some of the CG could have been cleaned up a little bit, but generally speaking, the film looks very, very good, and it's a great, entertaining piece of film. And I love the drama of the film as well. And then it does take itself more seriously, because Marvel, God knows, Marvel needed something like this, to restore people's faith in them, really. And it's one of the most game-changing movies that they've made. It really is a very impactful film. But yeah, I also like Martin Freeman's return as Ross. He's a good part of the film. But yeah, Black Panther is a winner for me. Okay, so the last two, and you can kind of predict what these are going to be. Number 2 is Avengers Infinity War. Infinity War did what it set out to do and more. It pleased the crowd. It got it right. It was an amazing film. I don't have much to complain about with this one. I thought it was pretty epic and actually quite emotional. There was some good emotional moments, like when Thanos actually kills Gamora, throws her off the edge of the cliff to get the stone. That was very powerful. And as well, the moment at the end when they all start losing to Thanos. The movie does end on a downer, but it needed to. It needed to end that way. You know, evil prevailed on this occasion. Like, this one guy managed to achieve what he wanted to by the end of the film. Which is an interesting thing, that the heroes don't always win. I mean, obviously the story is going to continue in Endgame, but still, it was a very tragic ending when they all start fading away, and it was genuinely great to see all these characters together as well. I mean, so many people are in this film. I mean, you thought that Civil War was a juggling act. Well, you haven't seen nothing yet, because the Russo brothers, they have handled this amazingly. All these characters in this movie do a phenomenal job. Just so good. I mean, there are some characters that get less focused than others, but they are the ones that are going to be focused on more in the next film, in Avengers Endgame. They did that deliberately because they knew they were going to tell this story in 2 films, and I think it was important because obviously the end of this film, certain characters appear to die. So in the next film, it paves the way for the other characters to kind of get more of a central focus. And then at the end of the next film, they all come together. But Avengers Infinity War, it is epic. It is emotional. They nailed Thanos. It's Thanos' movie. Literally, he's the main character. And you actually do understand his motivations. It's not about destroying the universe. It's about balancing the universe. You know, he feels that the world is kind of overpopulated and the resources need to be rationed, shall we say. And I think it's a clever idea that he doesn't want to kill everyone and everything. He just wants to wipe out half the universe, which I think is an interesting idea. And Josh Brolin nails this character. He's actually quite scary, and he's really cool. He's a really cool physical presence. And people die in the movie. As I've said, Gamora dies very tragically. Loki's death is actually very, very tragic as well. But don't worry, you will see Tom Hiddleston as Loki again in a TV series. But yeah. And I like the music score. I think the music score is very tragic as well. They do amp up the emotion this time. And yeah, I mean, they handled all these characters very well. And there's a lot of action to keep you entertained. And the film is funny. It balances the comedy. It doesn't completely go too far with the humour, but it doesn't completely go too serious and depressing either. There is a nice tonal balance. And that's exactly the same for Avengers Endgame as well. So Infinity War is an absolute brilliantly constructed film, and it was worth the wait. And Marvel did the right thing by building up to this and having all these characters have their own films, because then that way they can have their own development. And when you get to this film and Endgame, the payoff is worth it, because you don't need to develop the characters as much, except Thanos. You know, Thanos is the character that gets the most focus, because this is the first time we've seen him, really. Whereas the others have all had their own movies, they've had their development. So this time it's about Thanos, and I like that. Okay, I'm going to quickly wrap this up because I've been on for ages. So number 1 is Avengers Endgame. You knew this was going to be number 1. You just knew this was going to be number 1. Avengers Endgame is amazing. It is a flawless movie. I mean, they could not have done this any better. It is so good. I love this movie. I absolutely adore this movie. I was blown away when I first saw it. This is staggeringly good. This is without question Marvel's greatest achievement. It really is. The idea of them going back in time to retrieve the stones and reverse what happened to everybody in the previous film. It works very well. It's done exceptionally well. The Russo brothers direct perfectly. Again, the amount of characters, the gargantuan amount of characters in this film is insane. I mean, The fact the characters who got less focus last time get more focus this time, which I appreciate. And I love that the first act is spent, dealing with the emotional repercussions of what happened in Infinity War. The first act is a slow burner, everyone's, grieving and feeling down about what happened. They find Thanos, they kill him, but then it doesn't change what happened, so they mope around for 5 years. But it was done so well. You really felt sorry for them. And then the second act was the time travel. And then the third act was the big finale. I mean, my God, that finale is amazing. When you see all those characters there, and then Captain America says, Avengers Assembled. That was awesome. Oh my God, I was literally jumping in my seat when I saw that in the cinema. It was so good. And this movie is 3 hours long. Literally. It is the longest film in the MCU. It is 3 hours long. And it needed to be that long. It was perfect to have it at 3 hours long because of the amount that there is going on in the film. I mean, it is just perfect. And again, like Infinity War, it's very emotional. Their characters die in the film. Black Widow's death was very sad, although it was very similar to Gamora's death. The time travel elements can get kind of confusing, but then again, time travel is always confusing at certain points. But I love that they actually go back to previous events of previous films. And this film is brilliant because it allows sort of a thread of continuity and it ties it all together. The idea of Thor actually being overweight was kind of funny and interesting. Although I do wish that Thor had actually kind of slimmed down a bit by the climax of the film. But yeah, it doesn't matter too much. That's only a minor complaint. There's funny moments as well. There's so many funny scenes here. The Hulk as well has also merged himself. Like, he's green, but he's Banner, but he's green, so he's not completely raging. But there's just so much here, and I also love the death of Tony Stark is a very sad moment, and the fact that him and Pepper have a daughter is also quite sad. That she loses her dad so young. The ending is just brilliant, and it makes you think back to 2008 when it all started with the first Iron Man movie, and like, this is how far they came, and they did such a good job. They honestly did such a good job. Avengers Endgame is just phenomenal. It's a phenomenally good film. You know what? I think this is where it should have stopped. I think the series was fine here. It should have ended with Endgame, but no, of course they're going to carry on and set up more stories in the future and find another saga, shall we say, to build up to. But considering they've been building up to this since the first Iron Man movie, you could argue Avengers Assemble, but I argue the first Iron Man film because of the characters. So it was perfect. It was perfect, and I very rarely say that about an MCU movie, but Avengers Endgame, it kind of makes me want to watch it again. I will have to watch this film again at some point. It's so good, and the Russo brothers should be incredibly proud that they managed to craft this movie. There's so much to tie up. I mean, it's hard to sort of focus on one individual character, really, but everybody gives a great performance in this film. I love the opening of the film. It's quite polarizing when you see Hawkeye's family get get faded out of existence. That's very sad. They really play on the emotions. Like, I love the scene also when Ant-Man goes to see his daughter, and she's all grown up. She's like an 18-year-old girl, and it's really quite sad, actually, because at the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp, he got stuck in the quantum realm for about 5 years during the Thanos incident. So he wasn't zapped out of existence. But anyway, I won't prattle on too much longer. So that's basically it. That's my ranking of the MCU movies in 2020. So just to recap my list. Number 23, The Incredible Hulk. 22, Thor The Dark World. 21, Avengers Age of Ultron. 20, Captain America The First Avenger. 19, Thor Ragnarok. 18, Captain Marvel. 17, Iron Man 2. 16, Ant-Man and the Wasp. 15, Spider-Man Homecoming. 14, Thor. 13, Spider-Man Far From Home. 12, Ant-Man. 11, Captain America The Winter Soldier. 10, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. 9, Iron Man 3. 8, Iron Man. 7, Avengers Assemble. 6, Guardians of the Galaxy. 5, Doctor Strange. 4, Captain America Civil War. 3, Black Panther. 2, Avengers Infinity War. And 1, Avengers Endgame. Whew! And breathe. Got God, I've been talking for ages. Okay, so that's my ranking of the MCU movies so far. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Please comment down below and let me know. I'd love to know everybody else's full lists. And there are 23 movies, so this will be interesting. Just to say, obviously, it's very sad that the Black Widow film was delayed. I would have probably waited to include that list had the movie still... Just to say, I'm sorry to hear about the Black Widow movie being delayed, but obviously due to the COVID-19 situation, we can't do anything about that. But had the movie still been scheduled to be released in May, I would have included that in the list and waited for a bit. But you know what? I don't know when it's going to be released. So whenever we do see Black Widow, I will review it. And I do look forward to seeing it because it looks like it's going to be one of the more serious Marvel films. But we shall see. Overall, as a series, I do love the MCU. It's a really good set of films. Not everything in it is perfect, but they strive to do something massive and something huge, and I think they achieved that. I think they achieved something great when they made these films, especially now since we have the Infinity Saga, as they call it, which is basically all of these movies. So yeah, and as for the future of the MCU, I don't care about it as much. I really don't care about it as much, but I'll still watch the movies provided they're good. But Black Widow is one that I am interested in. Of course, it's a prequel. It's set way before whenever. But yeah, so I hope you've all enjoyed this ranking, and stay tuned for more videos. So until next time, I'm Mr. TARDIS 11, soon to be Screen Sherlock. As I did explain, I am changing my channel name to Screen Sherlock. I'm just waiting on the artwork. So when I receive the artwork, a friend of mine, bless him, Thomas Steele, Dark Nuke Studios, he's going to design some channel art for me, which is very nice of him. He just offered to do so. So shout out to you, Tom. Thank you very much. And I know Tom loves the MCU, so I thought this would be a good time to mention him. And I'm sure his list is going to be very different to mine. But Tom, if you're out there, if you're watching this or listening to this, thank you very much, man, for doing the artwork for me. And I hope you enjoyed my ranking. So until next time, folks, see ya.